It's a pain in the ass because we never built a lift in here.
For whatever reason, it's an Italian thing. I get one went to the Pope.
Are you rolling?
Yeah.
Oh, jump it this way.
Great. Excellent. So it's great to see you guys here again. Today I'm up in New York and I'm here visiting a mate of mine. His name's Alan Wilzig. Now, it was a couple of years ago, I guess now, and I was on the way back from a MotoGP race and I met you on the plane and you were on the way to Arizona to do a track day somewhere.
On the way home.
Yeah.
And we're both heading back to New York.
Yeah, that's right. So, and then I saw this guy sitting in the plane and he got on with a Repsol jacket and I was like, nobody
In America, in particular.
America wears a Repsol jacket.
Repsol, Red Bull,
What is going on with
Marquez.
this bloke? He must know what MotoGP is. So we get chatting and
you were stuck with the middle seat, which adds to the humor of it, because the greatest line of all, and the one that made me blush more than any kind thing that you said after we compared notes, that the mutual adulation of, really, you run MotoGP games, I do this, that I have a racetrack, that if you recall, the fellow who was sitting on the other side of you from the jet leasing company, who took us to F1 Montreal a few months later. What a plane ride.
Yeah.
You know, and he's saying to me, the best line of the whole flight, besides all of our fun moto stuff in common, is that he says two things. The first is his wife called on Skype or something.
yeah.
And he said, okay, the kid's this, yes, I'll be home that time. But I don't want to stay on because I'm listening to this conversation between this guy and this other guy who's like that most interesting guy in the world on the beer commercials. So he goes, I gotta go. And so that was funny. And then he, you know, when you're in that business and you hear somebody built a racetrack, maybe he could afford to be one of my net card holder jet guys, you know?
I mean, his eyes lit up
and so he you know, of course, he turns and says, what the heck are you doing flying economy? And I said, how could you ask me that question? I just met like my new Tonka truck buddy, okay? We're like birds of a feather.
Yeah.
And you just invited me to Montreal Formula One. If I was flying by myself on a jet for $25,000, which I don't do anyway, and just consider a huge waste of everything.
Yeah.
And I don't go so much to obscure places that I can't take a commercial plane.
Yeah.
But even for me, I'd rather than blow $1,000 on and here we are sitting around someone who hasn't been that economical in the pursuit of their passion. Certainly economy was not at the forefront of anything I did here.
Yeah.
But I've always considered things like that where you just, you know, pick your spots, whether it's in motorsport or whether it's in life. To pay $2,000 for that extra business class ticket, that goes a long way to upgrading a hotel room for a week.
really. That you can actually
so,
enjoy for a while.
So, you know, if you can afford it all, great, more power to you.
Yeah.
But to choose, you know, and then I said to, you know, as I say, I wouldn't have met anybody flying there. And in first class, nobody talks to each other, and there's loungers and dividers and everything else. This is the best plane ride ever.
Yeah.
Latest Japanese advanced technology. So this one I put several thousand miles on. This is very special. I forget this. This was in the interim phase
the last ownership group that was not the original 30-year founders of the company, but not Kawasaki, of course, who owns it today. So there were 2 interim owners in between the originals and the current and forever, we're expecting, of Kawasaki. But I wanted to have one modern one, quote, built during that era. So this bike is a DB6, but it's called Azzurro, which is the azure, the blue of the Italian national soccer team. So when they won the World Cup, the owners, the short-time owners of Bimoto, who were very rich businessmen who liked bikes and just bought it for fun, they did this special edition that they made. How many guys are on a soccer team? 10? Mm-hmm. So they made 12. They presented, because the Italians won the World Cup that year. So each guy on the squad got a bike, the coach got one, and for whatever reason, it's an Italian thing, one went to the Pope.
Oh, really?
Yeah. This was not the Pope's.
Yeah.
But this bike was from one of the 10 players on the squad. So that's why you see the tricolore, and so this is a very special, paint and trim version of what was a regular bike that you could buy. They were very expensive at that. They were $30,000 or something, which is why I say they were new. There was nothing collectible about them. Still made in small production, but there was no allure for me to go spending $25,000 and $35,000 for totally modern bikes that just like rolled out of the factory 2 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Couldn't do it. But one with this little special livery and a little bit of a story to it, where it's one of 12. All right. So this was the intermezzo phase of the company after the original Tamburini and Mori and Bianchi, and because of course that's where the name Bimoto comes from. The first 2 letters of the 3 founders' names, including the very famous Massimo Tamburini. He's the Ta in Bimoto.
Oh.
And so Tamburini is a design god. The most beautiful MV Agustas, because he stayed with the Castiglione brothers after they sold Ducati to the American Texas Pacific Group. I was, as I say, the banker for Ducati USA, which is why that would give me when someone would say, what the hell do you have a motorcycle for in a 100-year-old mahogany boardroom? I said, well, I'm proudly, it's for a customer. Ducati North America, one of my big commercial customers. So, and they would say to me, so what does that mean? Like, for the plumbing supply company that you've been doing, you're gonna have like pipes sitting here next week, Tim?
Have a toilet?
No, not really. Yeah, have a toilet.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, I gotta say, so I met you on the plane, and it's often you'll talk to people and they'll talk it up something stupid, and they'll say, yeah, I've got a racetrack, or I've got a this, or I've got a bike collection. And I never, in my wildest dreams, expected it to be like this. So,
yeah, well, when you say I've got a bike collection,
yeah,
I know I shouldn't make the reference. It's to like American limited Australian knowledge,
yeah,
but it's like, I got a bike collection.
I know. You're going to need a bigger collection.
That's a pocket knife of a collection, okay? It's very cute, and we're fellow enthusiasts through and through,
yeah,
but I got a collection, mate.
Yeah. So, Alan's as I got to know you, and I visited you in New York a couple of times, and then finally I came up to visit you here it's called Wilzig Racing Manor. And it's up near, if anybody knows the Taconic State Parkway, you get on that.
For those that are, if I may,
yeah,
I already have, but for those who are somewhat astute of the northeast area of the United States, as soon as you say I'm going upstate, if you don't say the Hudson Valley, which means from New York City, you're hugging that east bank of the Hudson the whole way up, 95 miles in particular to come here, but in general, okay? People immediately assume that you're going northwest, away from the Hudson and the Atlantic Ocean, towards the heartland of America, just from a direction standpoint, okay? But just an hour and a half, but you're really going north and west. and it's a completely different area, but 80% of the people that say they're going upstate are going up and west.
Yeah.
We're of a much smaller enclave that just go directly due north following the river. And in fact, 9 miles from here, the largest town that we're closest to, the town that we're in right now is called Taconic, with a GHK, that's like the Native American way of saying Taconic.
Yeah.
And for those that know the map of the states, we are literally at the nexus. Just like out west, you have the 4 square states in America. You can go to a post in the ground and stand in 4 states at the same time.
Yeah.
So right here, I could take you to a spot where we could literally stand where Massachusetts, the western part of Massachusetts, not the ocean part, of course, the western part of Connecticut, and the eastern edge of slightly upstate New York, all come together at one point.
I mean, it's beautiful up
So
here,
it's
isn't it?
almost kind of at the juncture, for those that just know for business or otherwise, I'm 2 hours, the reason this became such a valuable farming area of the Dutch colonial farmers that came here 1700s and later, 1800s. Our house is a 1850 Dutch colonial farmhouse that we renovated. They did it because depending on market prices and things like that, you could sell your milk from here 2 hours south, you're in New York City, 2 hours northeast towards the ocean, and you're in Boston.
Yeah.
So that's exactly where we are, halfway between New York and Boston.
Yeah.
My first thing in cycle world that introduced me to the American motorcycling public was that I'm gonna come here and do this, okay? But had done nothing yet. I hadn't exited the Hamptons. So the real story was about how we're in the posh Hamptons where people are driving around in Rolls Royce and Ferrari, and we're all on our bikes dressed like Space Invaders and don't fit that Hampton ilk, but for the fact that I'm Mr. Social and everything when the leathers are off. But when the leathers are on, what the hell are those guys even doing here? They look so out of place. So the story was a lot about that, and the responses, letters to the editor. I'll never have those 40 minutes to read, to live again. Why'd you waste the space on like some rich douche that bought 10 Ducatis and thinks he's like the second invention of motorcycling? Who cares? And what he's doing upstate, everybody knows 100 people that said they were gonna build a racetrack until they went to get a permit, until they saw how expensive it was, etc. So it was like total piss on my parade.
Yeah.
And Matthew knew what he saw with me, and he compared me to George Barber and said, I wouldn't be surprised. Wilzig says he's doing this little thing for himself to be close to his family. It's a very sweet story, but I wouldn't be surprised if one day we find like there's a MotoGP round that takes place 2 hours north of New York City. And he said, because George Barber said the same sweet story to me, and look at what Barber Motorsports Park turned out to.
It kind of struck me when I was coming up here that...
And you're late, by the way.
the
last time you visited here.
Oh, well, I got some video of the last time.
Okay,
too,
then it was majestic. Yeah.
It was incredible. But what I found, it sprung to mind that when you're driving up through this area, the last thing you expect to see is a racetrack. And it reminded me of that Field of Dreams, you know, like that movie.
It's impossible, you know.
If you build it, they will come.
I'm a motorsports guy through and through.
Yeah.
You know, from the jeans I wear, not just for TV or for a podcast.
Yeah.
To everything. I can't ride every minute. No one can.
Yeah.
But you can be immersed in your passion.
Yeah.
All the time. Either in the most grand way.
Yeah.
Or just choosing to wear a motorcycle themed jacket like the one that I wore, where whether it's that, you know, if it weren't for that jacket, I mean, poor you, we're stuck in the middle.
Yeah.
We would have ended up talking about something. We're shoulder to shoulder. 2 men don't fit.
Yeah.
3 men side by side in economy, you know? So making the best of it, sure, we would have chatted. As soon as you would have said, I make MotoGP games, do you know what that is?
Yeah.
We would have been off to the races, you know?
Yeah.
Pun fully intended.
So this, another exception, this is Luigi Segale. These are so limited production, hand-built, Great story behind this. Luigi Sigali, like by Moto, takes Honda engines and builds his endurance racers. You see the classic endurance racing twin, like the original Gixxers, you know? And things, magnesium, everything. And not the frame, but everything else. And famously, being a bit of a Bimoto historian, as you have to be if you're this deep into them, as I, Honda, because of the pride of Soichiro Honda, they didn't want someone building motorcycles with Honda engines that are better than Honda motorcycles. No more Bimoto. They had Ducati, and they had Kawasaki, and they had Suzuki, and that was it.
To a certain extent, the style of truly living a motorsport lifestyle.
Yeah.
So it affects everything, because you're going to do, as I did with the shirt I chose for today, you're going to Mugello to ride a GP track. Once they heard you were coming, the guy with the racetrack from America, Marcus Kramer, of the lightweight new favorite bike of mine that I wanted to answer when you gave me the questionnaire.
Yeah.
Which one wouldn't you sell? Which one? I went to Kramer, because I'm fanatical over them, as anyone is who's ridden or raced one.
Yeah.
It's the best race bike that rolls from delivery from the crate to go win races. And people love to say that about street bikes and every Kawasaki Gixxer that's ever been made and stuff. And those are true, sure. If you spend thousands of dollars and turn them into track bike, this thing rolls off and you can't spend a nickel on it. From the data acquisition to everything.
Really?
It's ready to go, and yet nothing about it feels like, boy, it sounded cool to own a Moto 2 bike used that I could buy or whatever, but this thing doesn't want to live off of 18,000 RPMs, and if I don't ride like a 20-year-old champion, it's not even working right. This is kind of like a pure race bike for every man.
But why it exists to begin with, where it's certainly more than my needs would ever be, is because I wanted to create the ultimate man cave. That if you like motorsports, you could go to that guy that I referenced before, not meaning to take digs. We all spend our money in different ways and places. He's got the Steve McQueen car in a suburban garage that you want to roll it out even to look at it. It's not nice to the car to look at it when it's garaged like that and can't move around it or whatever. So I said, I'm not going to spend my money on one crazy car or two super expensive cars or something like that. I'm going to spend it on the place in every sense and way, okay? And some of the decorating and stuff, most of the professional rider suits that you see were all bought on eBay and different eBays in Spain and Italy all over the world, because every time there's a motorsports charity, whether it's riders.org, that used to be Riders for Health, that does the last mile delivery, as we say these days, of bringing the billions of dollars of donated medicine to Africa out to all the remote villages where there's no roads during the, well, they're all on KLRs.
Yeah, right, okay? That's the MotoGP.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I had a guy, Murph, that would go around the MotoGP paddock. He was the known thing, never really had a job with the teams and things, but a nice guy. Anybody would give him anything, whether it was Schwanz's body work, whether, you name it. He got the greatest stuff, but he couldn't get out of his own way sometimes. So he did like I think it was a Donington GP, and he got from the Ducati transporter, their pizza plates, all the neatest stuff that any enthusiast would want to buy and take home. Particularly the British are crazy about it, you know. Would have made plenty of money. Never spoke to the promoter to get a slot, to announce, to put in the program. Nobody knew there was an auction, and it came and went. Nobody bought it. So a woman that's a mutual friend says, Alan Wilzig's building this thing, he's crazy. Just call him, make a deal on a number, and sell him the whole auction worthy of stuff that went unsold because it was unadvertised in Donington. So much of the stuff you see on the walls was for that. When I take my young friend Dan, he's like a kid brother of mine, and he was great on track. His father races BMW cars and things, and I had to teach him to ride a bike. So I put him on our little M&Ms, the little trio of NR they're NSR 50s. Take the bodywork off in case he drops it. Everybody started on those, but I put them in Julian Simon's World Championship winning Repsol leathers because they're both little squirts, 120-pound guys, you know? And so it fit him perfectly. So I said, you have to be careful because, of course, like all these racers, they donate the crashed and destroyed practice leathers and things. So this seam's kind of opening up and so and so. But you're on a 50cc bike training and you're also wearing World Champ. I'd rather be wearing his suit with some tears in it than a new crap suit, you know, that you bought at Discount Cycle.
I guess when you one of the things that sort of struck me when I first came here is like, why? What would possess somebody to take a beautiful farm out in the middle of nowhere? Well, not in the middle of nowhere. We were 2 hours out, if that, from New York City. But,
yeah, well, that was very much the point,
you know,
because if
so-
I was 4 hours out
Yeah.
from New York City, they have no revenue, they have no tax base, they have farms that are often no longer farming, but nobody's rushed out there to subdivide
Yeah.
and create an economy or otherwise.
Yeah.
So if I would have said racetrack there, they would have said, bring it on.
Yeah.
We love racing. This isn't New York City. This is the red part, as they say politically,
Yeah.
of New York. And we don't have the people, but we've got the land.
Yeah.
Come on and do whatever you want to do. But 2 hours from New York, this Hudson Valley here
Yeah.
is very precious, very tree hugger.
Yeah.
And when you said I didn't want to step on you, when you were saying coming up here, I thought to myself, the last thing I expect is, well, all of my neighbors who predated me by 20 or 40 years, the last thing they expected was some guy was going to come up here and build himself a racetrack.
Yeah.
And as you've asked me in the past, you know, so much of the story of how it came together was the legal onslaught
Yeah.
that I had to deal with to complete it. And one of the reasons it was such an onslaught is two of the reasons. One, there was a 5-year battle here chronicled in a documentary called 2 Square Miles, which is the size of the town of Hudson.
Yeah.
And Holcim, which is the largest Spanish company, largest cement in the world.
Yeah.
So for this part of the world, it was always St. Lawrence cement, like
Yeah.
the St. Lawrence River in Canada. And so all the cement plants, certainly in the Northeast and most of the US, is St. Lawrence Cement, a division now of Holcim.
Yeah, right.
So St. Lawrence was going to build a new super plant here, 9 miles away, on 1,700 acres that they had already bought and got approvals for. And the quick and dirty, there was, as is often the case with knee-jerk activism, racetracks are bad, cement plants that run 24 hours with 300-foot smokestacks will ruin life for everyone in perpetuity.
Yeah.
Except for the fact that for 70 years, 3 existing St. Lawrence plants have been operating
Yeah.
within 20 miles from here. All 3 of those dirty, grandfathered plants were going to be shuttered as part of the deal, unchangeable, and exchanged for one new 2005 state-of-the-art,
Yeah.
clean as a whistle, triple filtered thing. So who did it really benefit that they stopped Holcim from doing that, and we still have the 3 old smoky plants chugging away like they did for 80 years with the minimal amount of scrubbers and retrofits that were needed, but they never would have forced them to deconstruct and reconstruct their plant, and replacing it with a new plant would have been a constructive equivalent of that.
Yeah.
So that said, people will be activists for a number of reasons, political often the case, and they shut that down. The lead professional activist that story chronicles moved 6 miles from me in my little town of 1,000. So he felt like, and he used to live in Hudson.
Yeah.
So he felt like he went from the skillet into the fire. I fight a cement plant in a town of 5,000 or maybe 8,000 and defeat that. And now I come to retire to the quiet little hamlet of Taganik. And Mr. Racetrack, Josh, are you kidding me?
So
is this a joke?
BMW did the Will thing. This is another Australian, funny, Alan Cathcart's bike. Ducati fans in Australia definitely know V2. I don't know if it's still around, but a good engineering company. This Supermoto Bimoda has that like 660cc single BMW engine. So that a latecomer that they played with a few little BMWs. This thing rides like a jackhammer, no counterbalancer thing. It's
really
unrideable, yeah. And that's for a guy who, like me, who would ride out to the Hamptons 100 miles also like this.
Yeah.
On my 2002 KTM Duke 2 that looks like a praying mantis, and that's a single too. People were saying, "What are you doing? You're riding 100 miles." I say, "It's a parking lot. It's a 4-hour traffic jam. I'm riding around them. I'm not even riding with them." And I could ride that bike anywhere around the world. It's got a counterbalancer, and it just shows like, well, if you come from real street bikes and 400 pounds and stuff, that's like a toy. How could you take that for if you've ridden dirt bikes and things? And like I say, I didn't grow up doing it, but I did it enough just in, my few years of immersion into all that it was like, it's no big deal, take a bike. But some people look at you like you're crazy to take a single.
Great, you like racing? I got a Mustang. My kids ride dirt bikes I felt like I was, in the friendliest of company. And then I find out, oh God, Mr. Full of Himself documentary activist just moved into my town. He is not gonna like me. You know what ended up being the best thing that was ever said to me through all the public hearings and every crazy thing of old ladies standing up and saying, I was traveling home from seeing my sister in Nebraska, and I saw a cow on a postcard in the shop in the airport. And it reminded me of my childhood, 50 years here growing up in Columbia County. And I thought of those cows, and I thought of Mr. Wilzig's racetrack and what he's doing to the community. And then she burst into tears. Whether they were crocodile tears, they probably were real. That's how whacked out and passionate she was that my racetrack that gets used about 2.25% of the year. The least used professional 13-meter wide track in the universe.
Yeah.
And the bane of no one, as the last, thank God, 10 years since paving and victory has shown.
Yeah.
We have only friends, and those who are our detractors have either become friends or moved away.
So Red Baron, through their imports thing, was the Bimoda source for Japan, and the Japanese are the same way. They're crazy for the Italian bikes, and the Italians are crazy for the Japanese bikes, and it always just fascinated me how, and I guess I'm the same, because I've never jumped to have a Harley Davidson. Again, if they made a 300-pound Harley Davidson that was like a Kramer, I'd be a flag-waving, patriot going right away, but it's obviously a bit of a different deal. But for those, we're talking sport bike to sport bike, but it was like they shunned them as if it wasn't cool to be an Italian on an Italian bike. And so the same goes with the scooters. Vespa this, Vespa that. It's iconic all over the world, and people snap them up. But in Italy, nobody wants to drive a Vespa.
Yeah.
So, did you buy the farm to build the track, or did you get the idea to build the track after you bought the farm?
There were two criteria. The answer, of course, is I came here to pave.
Right.
I came here to do everything that you see,
Yeah.
almost precisely the way you see it.
And we have to rent from like a construction rental place a scissor lift when we want to bring bikes in and out, because we do it to bring them from the outside to go up and down. We've rolled a couple bikes or winched a couple bikes up the stairs with boards. It's really dicey. It's much better to do it from the outside. So finally we bit the bullet. My collection had evolved over the last couple years versus the initial that I built in warehouses of buying the collection while I was building this building, so that I wouldn't reach a point that I finished this in 2008, and now I just have a big empty warehouse and have my 10 bikes from the Hamptons and start adding onesie twosie. So I was flush with money, just sold the company. It was the right time. I had the free time, I had little baby children. Everything was kind of quiet. So I stayed up all night on eBay and with buyers and brokers and things. And I assembled 70% of the collection that you see while this building was under construction for 2 years.
Really?
As soon as it was done, we polished the concrete floors, put the bikes in place, the cars I already owned, and voila. You came in and it instantly became, which was the point of this building as opposed to what's the whole main point takeaway of this place. But the point of this building,
It's always funny, when you say bought the farm, it's an American expression for dying.
Oh, is
He
it?
bought the farm, yeah, which means lights out.
Yeah.
But
this is
it's
definitely not
unavoidable.
lights
It's
out.
unavoidable for
Yeah.
this. So I had two criteria.
Yeah.
I had built in 1995 to 97. So from 30 to 32 years old. Fortunate enough, and with a big construction mortgage, my older brother Ivan and I pooled resources and debt, and in 18 months I built a 15,000 square foot castle in the Hamptons that my brother now owns, and that's part of the reason I'm here.
Yeah.
We always were a bit like the odd couple. I was with my steady girlfriend and permanent pillion, my Belgian wife, or former wife, Karen, and Ivan was living like the Hugh Hefner life in the castle that I built him, and he was well suited to do it, and the place was really well suited to be the venue.
Let's go for a walk down here.
So my point is talking about how we lift bikes up and here and down
Yeah.
from the outside. We finally got to the point where I said, this is annoying me now. As curator of my own stuff, I got a hodgepodge. I need all the Motos upstairs.
Yeah.
So while it may have thought that was the obvious thing to do from the beginning, whether it's because I didn't have enough Motos to fill this stage up here, or didn't know what to do with some of the other stuff that was up here, so we made certain selections to say, you know what, the NR 750 is special. It stays up here. The bike that introduced me to the motorsports world, I started to say before, I don't carry a grudge, but I didn't say what I don't carry a grudge about. Matthew Miles from Cycle World. Been with Bonnier forever, all the enthusiast publications. Great guy, great friend. Came here the first time. Mutual friend Keith Code knew that Keith Code, California Superbike fame, and the rest, Joe Roberts, mentor and coach, had helped me with the track. I knew that this was real deal.
It's the rock star lifestyle.
It is,
Absolutely rock star in the Hamptons. And, to go from that.
I once had someone doing an interview. They love my brother. He's a pop music singer and does remixes of 60s peace and love hippie protest songs and stuff, and turns them into techno music for today. And so I was doing a small contributing piece on a story on my brother, Sir Ivan, as his stage name is. And so when they were asking the nitty gritty of what was it like, you and Karen living in half of this place, and Ivan waiting for the nightclubs to close to I could turn the heat off, to have the after hours wild parties. What was the wildest night that you ever looked out your window from your hidden bedroom behind the bookcase and saw something that really popped your eyes out? And I said, well, the Romanesque swimming pool that I designed down there, it's got a really good lighting package, even a couple of years before that I had built it. It's got music underwater, I said, and we keep it at 95 degrees Fahrenheit all, the whole season. So it's like a jacuzzi, but you can go wherever you want. So I said, so on average, after the nightclubs, people are partying, my brother's crew, if I look out my window, that when you look in an illuminated swimming pool, it's like an aquarium.
Yeah.
You're not hiding anything of the bodies in there. So when I would look out every Friday and Saturday night and see between 20 and 40 naked people cavorting in the tub, and you ask me after 10 years of cohabiting there together, what was the wildest night? You got me.
Every
Because
night.
They all look pretty wild, and I'm pretty jaded as far as I was the married brother and everything else. But I don't blush easily.
Yeah.
But he really for many years now he has an equally fabulous place, if one could say, that he has this crazy rooftop penthouse over the W Hotel, one of the hottest places within the hottest places in South Beach, of course, Miami Beach, Florida.
Yeah.
And this was the developer's private penthouse.
Oh, really?
So it's got a 60-foot long vanishing edge pool that ends looking out over the Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah.
And famous Ocean Drive, like from the Scarface movies and stuff,
Yeah.
the old pastel nursing homes and things that became the first drag of oceanfront South Beach, dead ends into their lobby, basically.
Wow.
So he's at like the corner, as you'd say in real estate, of Main and Main.
Yeah.
And so he spent 6 months a year there, and 5 months, 4 months out at the castle during that season. It's truly a summer place.
Yeah.
Although after the pandemic, just like up here,
Yeah.
many people moved from New York City to live permanently, as I have,
Yeah.
at their former weekend country place.
Yeah.
And thousands of people relocated to the Hamptons from New York City to live there.
Yeah.
Which brings us to answer your actual question of like how I got here and what I was looking for, and chicken and egg and everything else. I came from the Hamptons, which is a very posh beach resort, very crowded, increasingly crowded over the 22 years that I was out there from 18 years old.
Yeah.
There's a Jersey Shore that everybody knows from, and I was a New Jersey kid,
Yeah.
so to speak. But the Jersey Shore wasn't for me. With
Yeah.
all respect, to each his own.
Yeah.
That wasn't my gig.
Yeah.
And that's because, not because I was so self-aware as a 16-year-old or a snob or anything, but my older brother, Ivan, was my seeing eye brother.
Yeah.
I was his sidekick. And so he was a Hamptons guy because he had gone to law school in Manhattan, and Manhattan people, for the most part, unless their family has a house at the Jersey Shore, they don't look at it.
Yeah.
Everybody's to the Hamptons.
Yeah.
So I was Hamptons from the first time going to a rental house that we had there after my senior high school prom, to then buying a small house, selling it. I did all the construction for our bank that
Yeah.
I sold in 2004, which again comes to the timing of this. It gave me the liquidity to do this.
Yeah.
It gave my brother the liquidity to buy me out of my half of the castle, which he probably, if he had the money, would have wanted to do years before.
Yeah.
Because of the conflict, particularly with my then fiance.
Yeah.
With me, he's my brother. I love him. We respect each other's differences, but with them, it was like oil and vinegar.
Yeah.
Another funny Australian thing. People ask me where I came up with the design for this building.
Yeah.
The lazy brow roof, again, not a semicircle like the Pistons
Yeah.
and things as we spoke of before, but the more shallow brow
Yeah.
is a Tasmanian Air Sea Rescue helicopter hangar.
Oh,
that
really?
I saw on the coast of Australia. I wasn't there. I was
Yeah.
in an architectural magazine. It won architectural awards, which isn't very frequent for a Coast Guard helicopter hangar.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, hangars are the biggest, ugliest, blockiest buildings. They're probably dealing with sensitive thing of our precious coastline and island nation, you know? So you can't put an ugly block to ruin the seaside. So they put this gorgeous hangar, and I saw that and said, wow, talk about diminishing the heft of a massive building. That, I'm gonna do that. And their colors were somewhat subtle as well, probably dictated to be such. I'm gonna do it in Core 10 steel, which is pre-rusted, or rust by the time it comes off the truck. No galvanizing, no coatings, right? Which is why this building is so soft on the outside visually. So that lazy brow, an Australian import, as it were,
Yeah.
replicated from that, is what created the shape of this.
So point is, I did the Hamptons per the castle on the grandest level one can do.
Yeah.
You could spend more money, you can't make a bigger impact, you can't have a better party place. I built it on a hillside, so
Yeah.
even though you're only allowed to build 35 feet, so a fire truck can reach the front, if you're built on a slope, you can have what we'd call a walkout basement in a normal house.
Yeah.
Or 14-foot doors that lead into a nightclub directly from the pool deck. And when you're standing there before walking in, that castle's 50 feet tall because they don't measure from the back, they measure from the front.
Yeah.
So you come around the side of that house as we guide people and look up and see crenellations, which are the saw teeth of a castle, and the fenestrations and other, without getting too architectural, but everything that makes a castle undeniably a castle, and the height looming, you just say, holy cow. It's a jaw dropper. So point being, from that, I had 10 bikes at the time. My first bike, as per the little Suzuki article we were looking at, was a DR350S.
Yep.
I think I bought it in 1992, and it was a 1990 leftover. And I still have it, of course. Still have every bike I've ever been fortunate enough to own. And that's why, as you see in the collection, I haven't ridden every bike. People always love to ask me that question.
Yeah.
I spent years on Ducati 904 standard issue 2-valve motors.
Yeah.
900 SS, old, new, fuel injected. My first two by Motos, the DB2, D for Ducati, and the DB4 have the same 904.
Yeah.
Totally different chassis, totally different experience. I wouldn't have bought them just to show off. They're really different bikes, but the same motor. So if I bring in a bike that's already been preserved from somebody else's collection, and it's got a 904 Duck, why do I want to spend 2 weeks of Peter's time prepping it and this seal dried out and all of that bullshit to say, yep, feels like a Ducati, the exact worst bike for my roller coaster of a track? Because you're either exiting a corner or setting up for an entrance. So the torquiness that makes a V-twin so much fun on the street,
you're not getting to use it.
You're just porpoising up and down, entering and exiting. It's hard enough to move the bike side to side. One of the most fun moments, I know I'm all over the place, but you know I'm like that all the time. One of the most fun moments for me is when a 17, I've had up to as young as 15. I'll give you the list of names later. But having a 15 to 19-year-old just getting into his peak of athletic ability, Moto America rider, here for fun, for some PR, because I know I'll give him a big splash on social media, whatever. That's why I did this, you know? It's not to ride around myself. And if I'm not around and they don't want to risk offending me, and they're just with Pete on pit lane, Pete will be like, you want me to take you around tow you around a couple laps and show you the line? Most of them, to be polite, will say, oh, you could if he's leathered up and ready. If not, they'll say, nah, kind of part of my thing is going to a new track and dissecting it. That's what we do, you know? So that's okay. I'd rather experiment than maybe watch me do a couple laps and tell me if you have a tip or two of a line that might not be as obvious as standard issue with your high banking and things like that freaks people out. One of the most fun things is following a rider who's somewhat familiar with the track, so it's not like, oh, that's not fair, he just got here. But if you've never had a bike on the high banking of Daytona, not that I have that scale, massiveness, but I do have proportionally, it's a real banking. My daughter from 6 years old in a Yamaha Rhino would just say, Daddy, take me around the crazy turn. Because 18, 19 degrees, you won't find a roadway in the world that has it. That, by the way, came completely from Keith Code. When you asked me before,
so who designed the track?
Who contributed, who helped you, who designed it? I designed it with help from a structural engineer that had never watched a race and knew nothing about it, and my excavating and paving contractors who had never done a track. They've done 100 years of local roads, okay? Which we can talk about what makes the real difference between the two. How annoying, I hate motorsport club tracks because for safety, they're not really built for racing. So like the braking zones into the corners at the ends of the straightaway are so lame, into such a bottleneck of a funnel, that you gotta start slowing down at like the 5 board. And not just me, because I'm average. Everybody does, because if there's more than one car trying to funnel in there, it's a problem. So we call those like go fast, go slow tracks. If I'm running the Rotax carts, well, there's no sense being at 11,000 RPMs waiting for the motor to explode. They're not designed to go on a 13-meter wide track. But, so then we'll put chicanes in, but those are carts. But for us, it was when you're doing it yourself, how tricky do you want to make it so that you end up with the result that we did? That the fact that it's bidirectionally safe with runoff clockwise and counterclockwise, no barriers to hit. And I wish I could have 2 miles here, but there was no way in my allotted space to have 2 miles and still be bidirectional. So I could have been a little bigger, but once you're one direction, you're cutting down by half your ability. So at the crook of the claw, my cut across road that brings all 100 feet of elevation change up to that carousel, from the lows of turn 2 plunging down to turn 3. Super fun going up or down that because it's a shoot, you know. And if I'm myself out there, or I'm playing follow you, follow me, which is often the case, we can have 4 riders at a time here. By our usage permit. We wouldn't want to have more, number one, and we never go as 3 and 1. We ride 2 by 2, because as most motorcyclists know, or even in a car, when you're 3, the first one jams on the brakes to not hit the muffler, number 2 jinks out of the way, and number 3 does a Simoncelli.
Takes it.
And it's a disaster.
2
by 2, 1 brakes, 1's out of the way, you're always good. So that's how we tend to ride. If I'm only with one other mate, I know he's following me, that's the point. So then I'll do a clockwise or a counterclockwise lap, then use the cut across road and do a transition 2/3 lap, and then do a full lap in the direction that wasn't the first third of the lap. So you end up getting, instead of 1.2 miles, you get 2 times that is 2.4, plus about 6/10 of a mile. So you're up to 3 miles, not clicks, miles. So that feels like anything but Sebring or Road America, the biggest, you know, or Circuit of the Americas. Those start at 3 and go up to 4, but 3 is pro.
People have asked me at different times, it's a question that everybody hates being asked, including myself. How much is your whole collection worth? And you know, for lifestyle stuff, they don't care about the enthusiast stuff. They just want to quantify, be able to flash dollar screens on a thing across the bottom, and that's what their audience cares about. But the bottom line is, I've never owned, between road cars, race cars, such and such, more than a maximum of $2 million US for everything that's got tires on it. At the height of before I sold off some of the exotic cars and stuff, I'm picking like a maximum point. So when we talk and we see that records have been broken of $60 million cars sold and things like that, that's great. But if it's not in a place like this, how much fun is it going to be to hang out for more than 5 minutes and be like, wow, Steve McQueen owned that. Cool.
You look at one and you're done.
And that's it. Whereas here, you come back and people will say to me, and it's not because we reshuffled the deck, as we spoke of earlier, did you have this bike here? For 9 years. You've been here 3 times. I never noticed it. I never saw it. You know, I owned the bike, and then the stories and everything else come from it.
I took the Fiat out today, the Bath out.
The monster.
I took the monster car. So I took that out and I set the drone up to follow me. And so the drone's following me, and I didn't realize there was that much elevation change, because the drone's following me and it nearly like smacked into the side of the hill.
I was going to say, did it hit you or did you hit it? It's coming up either way.
So there is a bit of elevation change. That back straight, you know, as you head down towards the banking left-hander or right-hander, depending on which way you're going.
I mean, and it's asymmetrical, of course. It's not set up like a NASCAR track or a conference table, or the cylinder and piston design on my NR 750, one of my favorite bikes here, of course, and one of the most rare, and certainly I think the most expensive. That everybody says it's oval piston, but of course the engineers at Honda allowed the marketing department to take over for that one, because there's nothing oval about it. Oval is rugby and American football. It's continuously curvilinear. the cylinders on that so they could fit 32 valves instead of, so that they could fit 8 valves times 4 is 32.
Yeah.
So they can fit 8 valves per cylinder was to have 2 long straight sides, a semicircle, and a semicircle. So it's like you took a conventional round piston, cut it in half, and elongated it.
Yeah, right.
Just like many conference tables that you see.
Yeah.
A conference table would be terrible as
And
an
that's
oval.
the shape of the piston in that bike.
Yes. So everybody says oval.
Yeah.
They're never oval. Imagine getting rings to seal on
Yeah,
an oval.
that would be horrible.
It's hard enough to get the junctures just right where you go from straight to semicircle.
Yeah.
But it's very much that. Whenever you see oval piston anything, wah, 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 it's oval piston nothing.
Yeah.
But just how the hell do you explain it without 19 words to say it's like a conference table and a thing? Because of, as I say, a board table, an elegant board of directors table in an oversized, intentionally oversized, impressive room like we used to have at the bank, has a big oval
Now-
table, okay? Because it feels like you're at the White House or something like that. But for a standard issue conference room,
Yeah.
they're not in cavernous rooms. They're on the 3rd floor in the mortgage department. You can't have people skinnying by because the table's bulbous on the sides. It's
Yeah.
got to be straight on the sides. It just needs to seat 12 people.
So the annoying part of that first Cycle World thing of what I'm gonna do was overshadowed by, we don't wanna see some rich guy in the Hamptons. We've seen all that before and it means nothing. And talk about building a track means nothing because it never really happens. But the comparison, as he did, to saying, oh, I heard that before, that's what George Barber said. It was gonna be a little this and that, and now it's grown up to be Barber Motorsports Park. So that gets my secretary at the time at the bank, FedExes that to me, knowing I'm at Barber Motorsports Park with California Superbike for some more level 4 one-on-one training. So I show Keith, look man, you're mentioned of our relationship together. He dug it, but we were again already friends. And then I realized this is perfect. Everybody says that for me, or someone like me, it's not just incredible to see the Barber Motorcycle Museum, largest in the world, more than 1,000 bikes on display, but you got to see the back of the house, the restoration shop, the bikes they had 2 of, the bikes that they don't have room for, and you race Lotus cars. He's got all these Lotus racing cars and things down there, but it's not part of the regular thing. You have to be allowed, invited, privately toured. So I walked to his receptionist, asked if he was in. She was nice enough or honest enough to say yes. I said, I know you're supposed to call in advance and things, but if a junior manager, if anybody of you could take us through those back areas, I'd just like to show you this. You can see on the cover, this Cycle World. It just came out this afternoon, and I'm compared to Mr. Barber. An honor for me. And maybe if he gets a kick out of it, he'll allow for the fact that we didn't call in advance, and I can see the rest of the place. And he came out himself, the nicest, most gracious man. He's like 78 years old or something at the time. This tall. They sold half of every ice cream and quart of milk in the state of Alabama for 70 years. Their family, so rich guy, no children. He's leaving this as his baby to the people of Alabama as a perpetual tourist attraction and thing. And so such a great, gracious man. And he came out and spent 2.5 hours with me and showed me everything of that place. And I will never forget it. And it was so cool. And it more than compensated by 100 to have to feel a little funny the first time reading 10 people calling me some rich asshole.
So speaking of conference room, I was reading one of the articles that's actually on the board, and I've got a photo here.
Oh,
of
the bike in the boardroom.
The bike in the boardroom. Now it's called the egg bike or something.
Yeah.
So tell me about that one.
It's that bike has the underpinnings, the chassis started by me purchasing a 998 FE, which stood for final edition, of course, because that was the final variant from the original 916 first Italian Ferrari-like sex bike, you know? And people would ask, are you ever jealous of anyone in motorsport? Yeah, an Italian kid that got to ride at 16 years old, a Cagiva Mito that looked exactly like that, to school.
Yeah.
I wish I was that kid.
Yeah.
And we'll talk later, whatever. But like, what would some people have asked me your motivation? It sounds like it's a cheeky answer. Why'd you do all this? You know, like, where were you going with this? And where did it start? Where did this whole motorsport desire for immersion come from? It's not like I'm the son of a race car driver or something obvious. It's quite the opposite. My dad was an Auschwitz survivor who came here penniless from Germany after the murder of 59 of his relatives. So he came here with less than nothing.
Yeah.
PTSD, but 50 years before anybody had a name for that. And he only believed in work and study. He was deprived his education from age 13, did forced labor for the Nazi war machine, so he worked for Siemens and Krupp's and all those companies, but they were making bombs and guns, just like General Motors was making tanks. You know, we know what wartime was like, even if it was just through the books. And of course, as the son of, like, basically a Holocaust historian, not just survivor, I read all those books.
Yeah.
Not just from a Holocaust and the whole, you know, that whole period. And so that said, no matter how successful he got, and his book is being released April 11th, not a vanity press by us, a proper biography. And but my dad was a legendary guy, and he only 5'5" little shorty, but took over a room in the best way possible when he entered, and the smartest guy in the room. And he made sure that because he had no education, all three of his children, myself included, went to the best Ivy League schools and did our best grades and best everything. So when I came out of the Wharton School, the best business school in the United States, where President Trump went, where his daughter Ivanka went 2 years after me, etc. And I say that my dad was the smartest guy in the room. It's not just a proud, loving son. I've been surrounded, lucky enough to be instructed by and surrounded by some of the greatest business minds and greatest minds in America.
Yeah.
And Elie Wiesel, the famous writer, everybody reads in high school, his book Night and things like. He was one of my father's best friends, and he would tell you, like, "Nah, I'm just a Holocaust survivor that writes books. Your father is a legend."
Yeah.
You know.
This is the bike that I referenced before. That was Malcolm Forbes' pride and joy. Everybody thinks of Malcolm Forbes, the business legend, and his Harley was with his buddy Elizabeth Taylor on the back, and maybe he needed the Harley because Elizabeth Taylor wasn't a waif, but this was the bike that he rode when it wasn't for a photo shoot with a celebrity of just a photo op. This was the bike that he rode and rode and rode. So two super cool things about this. It goes to auction, and with it is auctioned a red Samsonite, 80-year-old American luggage brand, a big red Samsonite custom case, cut out with foam in the inside, like the machine guns in the spy movies, or a photographer. And he had it so that no matter where he went in the world, his residences in Morocco, wherever, he could take this exact bike, put it in the foam and hard case, clamped together Samsonite, and the most reckless, rough baggage handlers that would slam it into the hold of his 727 capitalist tool that he'd fly around with couldn't damage this bike, that it would always come out of that Samsonite perfect and ready to ride, not with a mirror, not with a crack, everything just so.
What an awesome story.
And so he asked by Moda, after I think 12 years of ownership, he had ridden it 16,000 kilometers is on it now. I don't know how many he had ridden before, asking the owners of Bimoda to do like what Ferrari and now Mercedes does, take it into the factory and remanufacture it and restore it for him to take it for another 10,000 kilometers or whatever. And they said, "We don't do that. We'll make you any deal, anything. Take one of every one of our current models." No. This one, the seat height, everything about this bike suits me. And they said, "All right, well, for you, Mr. Forbes, send us the bike." And so this is, except for a few bikes at the actual Bimoda Museum in Rimini that they restored for themselves, this is the only bike that the factory ever restored for a customer.
Wow.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I was jealous terribly from age 14 of two friends that had Yamaha YZ80 mini bikes, little motocross bikes. And they lived in the same town as me. And there was nothing, I couldn't think of anything in my life. I've been a lucky, fortunate guy and everything else. But I was like, imagine at 14 years old, I'm riding my bicycle to this, and these guys are cutting trails through people's backyards and stuff. And we're not living in the country like up here. We're living in suburbia, 22 minutes from the Lincoln Tunnel right into Manhattan, past the Meadowlands Sports Complex where the Jets and the Giants play and things like that. And so my dad would say to me, look, it's not like I want to deprive you the ownership of the bike, although to be fair, because he lost his whole family, he didn't have children and things. He was a 16-year-old in Auschwitz, but lost everybody around him. So he didn't want to lose any members of his new family after being reborn in America. So it was like having two Jewish mothers, but my American-born Jewish mother was chill. My pseudo-Jewish mother, i.e. my dad, was anything but. So if I wanted to go to a late rock concert, if I wanted to join the wrestling team, forget about a motorcycle, forget about a gun ownership or whatever. It was this strange thing of because of his experience, he wanted to have a tough son that knew how to fight, that knew how to shoot, that knew how to do all the things that the little Jews that got herded into the gas chambers didn't have, with rare exception of some hunting rifles and some guys who became, as they called, partisans, that we'd call guerrillas today, that just lived in the woods and took pot shots at the Nazis. But there were this many of them because the Jews of Europe there, with the Einsteins and the Freuds and they were the great thinkers and the people of the book, not the people of the hunting rifle. Or the dirt bike. And so therefore, my dad didn't really have sports ever playing on television in my house growing up. He considered the greatest, now today everything's computerized, and unless you're a savant that walks around with too much information on a particular topic. My dad used to say to me in private, not to offend others, I cannot believe that some people will devote some of their limited brain memory space to who won the 1964 World Series and this arcana that surrounds and this obsession of these numbers and statistics and things. And I'd be like, yeah, but you're the same way with the bond market and the stock market and 1/64th of this and one tick of this and that. It's the same thing. It's just a lexicon of people that are into that. And he goes, yeah, but basically he understood that whether it's for what you learn from playing sports, the enjoyment you get from it, that sure there's a role for it, but he would kind of give that as the politically correct because he knows so many other people are into it. For him, it's a waste of time, a waste of your mind, whether you're thinking about it, playing it, whatever. Besides what minimum is required for physical fitness, you should either be family, work, more work, or learn something. You want to kick back, I would sit with him. One of our favorite things together was to watch the insurance company in America had it for 50 years, Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom, which before there was an Animal Planet and 19 cable channels just devoted to that sort of stuff, that was the one place to see nature and biology and such.
They did some strange things with their choice of some of these, this YB9, again, to be able to read Bimota nomenclature for those that aren't familiar with this somewhat obscure Italian brand, now owned by Kawasaki, and of course, therefore, you'll see the name a lot more, but they have the supercharged engine in it and stuff. It's going to be a thing. So when you look and see, this is weird script, but this is YB9. So you read it backwards. This is the 9th Bimota to have a Yamaha engine. That's how they're named. In SB6, the 6th Bimota to have a Suzuki engine. DB1, first Ducati. There you go. So nomenclature for these things where it's words and letters can go crazy. If you're into Ferraris, they used to do the displacement of one cylinder, and that would make it a 270 such and such because each one was 200. Arcane stuff that we're used to something being a 3.5L. You can understand that. engine capacity. But a single cylinder, that's kind of confusing even if you're into this stuff, you know?
So the three odd things, like, because all of this germinated at age 14 and 15 for me. I'm 55 right now.
Yeah.
So this has been a 40-year journey. And it started by there being no sport ever on television in my house except the US Open tennis championships once a year.
Yeah.
My dad was like semi-proud of the fact that he's never taken had never taken one swing with a golf club or a tennis thing. We'd buy country club memberships for our officers to take our customers and things, and we'd show up at the end for 15 minutes to have a handshake and a drink and socialize, but not spend 6 hours on a golf course or thing. It's just,
Yeah.
and for me, by the way, that same thing, the real reason I did this, besides the flowery stories and the story of my life interwoven of this, is because I wanted a friend of mine, Billy Pitts, one of my original core of Ducati buddy riders from the Hamptons, said, you know, this friend got in an accident on the street, this friend got hit with the typical, you know, I guess in your country it would be someone heading at you oncoming and makes a right across to the intersection and kills you. Sorry, just didn't see him, and he didn't, because the human brain is programmed to look for trucks that'll kill you,
Yeah.
not a little motorcycle that you will kill.
Yeah.
So had one of those experiences with us here. It's a left turn that kills you.
Yeah.
And he said, I'm not going to ride on the street anymore. He said, now he was like an instructor grade, 100 times better than me on the track at the time. I was a total noob for that. And we're going back. And he says, I'm just going to do track days. But he had a fun toter, the mobile home with the garage built into it. He had all these purpose-done track bikes, all the tools. He was a construction guy to begin with. So for him to spend 7 hours loading the trailer and 7 hours driving to VIR, to have, if there's no rain, and 7 20-minute sessions in your A group for him or B for me, that's an awful lot of schlepping.
Yeah.
And now we could all say, hey man, that's motorcycling, that's what we do.
Yeah.
And I almost ridiculously said, as if speaking of, we don't have racetracks in our backyard.
Yeah.
And of course, that's the whole point.
That's what you
If
did.
you do, you know, during the 25 years, half living together, then half married when it was time to have children, with my former pillion, as I say, I didn't go car racing after I sold my business and had the time and the money. And I didn't go on this Odyssey, little pun, because I did use Honda Odysseys and Pilots to scratch out when nothing else was able to go, or bumpy stuff of just beginning to, before we graded anything.
Yeah.
And then when I went to visit Klaus Wart, who became a friend at Ascari in Ronda, Spain, near Marbella, where I had the house, he takes me into his garage, and he was racing the Boss Series, big open single-seaters, former F1 cars and stuff for the really rich club racer, you know? And he had $1.5 million Schumacher Ferrari and a second one for his 25-year-old son, who was his teammate, and they would go dominate the series together.
Wow.
And so he takes me into the garage because he knows I'm mad about it all. Cars, bikes, the whole thing.
Yeah.
So's he. He shows me Bayless's last year Superbike championship win, €200,000 buy. But of course, on a racetrack, he's friends with Ducati, just like I was the banker for Ducati USA in New Jersey, which was the answer to a question you were about to ask me, I think, which is, how did it go being in like a rather staid environment like commercial banking in New Jersey? Was it weird for you to put did you just do it for the magazine, or did you really keep that hybrid Ducati MV Agusta Tamburini tribute, which is what that bike meant and means to me, especially now that he's no longer with us?
Yeah.
And the FE for me relates to the finish, because while I'm not Malcolm Forbes, I have a Malcolm Forbes motorcycle here, one of his Bimotas that he used to own, a famous business legend, Forbes magazine. While I have never and will own, like he did, the $4 million Fabergé eggs that were made as gifts for the Tsar
Yeah.
each year, the Easter egg and things with the little golden wagons. They're at the Hermitage, the National Museum in Russia. And like I say, the competitor, when one would come up at a Christie's auction for $4 million, was whether the country of Russia was going to be able to outbid Malcolm Forbes on the next egg.
Yeah.
Because that was their pecker on the table measuring contest. Malcolm Forbes and Russia competing for the eggs. How funny is that?
Yeah.
Tell me about the Honda here, because we were talking about that before with the...
Well, it's funny because I just mentioned to you that, you know, this bike, in one quick swoop, I talk too much in general, but here's a condensed thing because this bike answers like 3 of your questions. What's the most expensive bike here? This, about 160,000 US. There's only 200 of them that were ever made, so every one that gets sold sort of resets the market up or down. But you'd be an idiot to sell this for less than $150,000 if you just called 4 guys and needed to sell it in an hour, okay? The Japanese yen had fallen apart when I was buying my Motos, unrelated to what I was doing. And the guy said to me, look, this is a steal. This is a holy grail bike. Gave me a little background of it and said, because of the precipitous fall of the yen, you can buy this bike for 41,000 US. Every single one of my European bike collectors that I sell ex-race bikes to will buy this in a second. But you're buying 9 Motos from me through Red Baron right now. I'll put this in the container with you if you want it. And I did a quick Google and came back, yes, I want it. And so this is also answers a question that even I wouldn't think to ask. Which bike has appreciated most in value since you purchased it? From a financial question, which one, this is like an art collection, right? A rolling art collection. Which one of your pieces did the best, as they say? This quadrupled.
Really?
But again, like your smart grandfather would tell you in real estate or something else, all the profit's made in the buying, not the selling.
Yeah.
So with this, it's not the value of the bike. It was a combination of currency and other things that gave me that quadruple with this. So some of the quick things that make this bike so special, and you had asked me before, you know, and we're standing in just the right place for it, of the bikes that are not modern, track built or built for track, fleet. Which bike in your collection that you have ridden blew your skirt up the highest? And which bike in your collection have you yet to ride that you're still excited to do so? So answering in reverse, I'm dying to ride this, okay? I've heard one run, and it's like when a friend of mine came here with a Briton, talk about a holy grail bike, and just taking that scared to death at $500,000 worth 3 times this plus, with the pink, you know, tank and everything, that is not a bike I want to drop, you know?
So I have over there items that cost on average between, today, I bought them as a kid. I would accompany my mother, who was a prolific antiques collector.
Yeah.
And so she would take me with her, and I'd want to spend the time with her. But it gets a little boring when you're a young man going to antique things. So I had to start collecting something. When I was very young, I collected elephants. You can always find elephants. The Italians believe with the trunk up is good luck and things like that. So it was an inexpensive thing for a kid to collect that's with his mother, buying her stuff. That was one thing. Then I started looking as I got into that teenage transition time. I didn't go as often with her, more with my friends than when I was a 7-year-old, of course. But I fell in love with the outside of a Fabergé egg or any little collectible made the same way. The French call it guilloche.
Yeah.
The English call it engine turned enamel. The engine being the equivalent of a Dremel tool.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So an engraving tool. So the reason those things are so beautiful is because the jeweler takes either the egg, if you're them, or the business card holder from 1928, if you're me. Engraves filigree and all kinds of, or optical patterns, which looks just like carbon fiber, particularly when they apply the translucent colored, semi-see-through, semi-opaque colored enamel over it. And so engine turned enamel or
Yeah.
guilloche means engraved by a jeweler on the base,
Yeah.
and then translucent cover.
So the engine-
You have to take a shot, by the way, of the massive work of art that I made, the 20 by 20 panels. Remember from 20th Street?
I got
reflective
yeah,
of the
I've
sun.
got that.
Oh yeah,
It's unbelievable. There's
Okay.
a picture of it here because
So,
it's
so I blew that up.
Yeah.
That is my exploded view for those that have looked at engineering drawings in their
Yeah.
life. That's my exploded view of the Fabergé egg, the engine turn. I commissioned a guy with an angle grinder instead of a Dremel to do it on a 20-foot scale for me so that I could do 400 square feet, 20 by 20. I had a huge wall. Sorry. The wall was 20 by 20. The artwork is 12 by 12, like 4 meters square.
yeah.
But the thing with this place, we talked of the outside, the Tasmanian Air
Yeah.
Sea Rescue copter, hangar, and why it looks like this. But why does it feel like this? Why does it exist in the form that you see it? Because obviously we didn't copy the inside of a helicopter hangar. I don't have a helicopter, so the inside had to suit me, but not just in terms of what it fit. It had to be the most breathtaking, vaulted, ultimate place for someone who's into motorsports, two-wheeled or four, to come for 2 hours and have a beer and say that was the greatest thing ever and want to come back 5 more times over the year or successive years to do it, because just like a bike itself, it's beautiful from 12 feet away, and then all of a sudden you come in and go, oh wow, this is hand milled like jewelry. This is all CNC'd. And you start to see all these little Easter eggs and all these special things that we as enthusiasts, you look at a bike. Of course, that's what you're seeing, all the detailing, all the stuff. You look at 150 bikes, you're awestruck.
So coming where we say that the essence of how the hell I got here and why was it was time for my brother and I, based on the different lifestyles, trying to cohabitate and make the best of it, and not really having much choice financially to make a break from each other. So when I sold the bank in 2004 in New Jersey that I had run since 2000 after being my dad's number 2 for 10 years, and 10 years before that working my way up the ranks. The prices had escalated so much over that time period. When I built the land when I bought the 5 acres to build the castle, I paid $380,000 for the land.
Wow.
It sells for $600,000 an acre. Now it would have cost $3 million for the land.
Yeah.
I built that 15,000 square foot house for $1.8 million, including the land, and having to bring power and wells and everything from 5 acres of trees from nothing.
Yeah.
And it's like James Bond now, like a 7-tiered wedding cake.
Yeah.
And when you're down at the tennis court looking up, and it takes that 50-foot height that plus the topography and the steps and everything, you're looking at a 150-foot high colossus. It's crazy. By the way, my first taste of people freaking out and going, what is this crazy Wilzig guy building, was when I built that.
Yeah.
Every neighbor around there
Can you imagine?
started coming over when they saw my structural steel up to support the various things where I couldn't have columns inside, so I couldn't do standard stick-built construction. It looked a little bit like it was going to be a medical arts small office building until it became a castle.
Yeah.
And everybody's saying, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you building here? They're talking about a castle. It looks like an office building. And the neighbors were freaked out. Here, it became a much bigger level of freak out.
A lot of people I know will collect stuff, right? And they collect stuff and put it on the wall or put it in the garage or whatever. But you don't just collect stuff. You've gone out. You get out there and you rip it around the track and you smoke it. You do that as well, but you get out there and really give it a big nudge.
I was wondering when we were going to go like Joe Rogan, Elon Musk.
Yeah. So anyway, and one of the things that I love about the garage here, and what do you call this? The motor.
The motor building.
The motor building, right? Is you've got cars and you've got motorcycles and
And for me,
yeah.
that thank you, of course, but that is the essence to me. In the same way that when I spoke of track design before, how do you make it challenging without having some annoying, obnoxious thing that you lament having to go through every lap?
Yeah.
For a 100-mile trip. These singles, you're crazy to take for 3 laps because it just feels like it's going to literally rattle the fillings. So with the Bimota nomenclature, sure. I didn't finish with the Segale. We don't have to walk back to it. You got the image of it.
Yeah.
But he wanted to continue building his 12 or 15 endurance bikes a year. And Honda said, you can ask your fellow countrymen, we don't sell them to Bimota anymore, and they bought a lot more than you. But he had the right answer, which is, I own, as you know, the 3 biggest Honda scooter dealerships in Italy, and I want 12.
Thank you very much.
I sell 140,000 of your scooters a year.
Yeah.
Because as you may very well know, I stood out, I remember on a Sunday morning outside the Ducati factory in Bologna, and I hear the roar of bikes coming of a Sunday morning ride, and I'm like, this is gonna be so cool. I'm gonna see all of my favorite Italian bikes come by in like one parade, and what a cool place to be standing when I do. And they come through and everybody's on an R1, on a Gixxer, on anything but an Italian bike, as if they were embarrassed by their own country's incredibly beautiful and potent goods. Not one was on an Italian bike. 15